Welcome, everyone. Thank you for spending your lunchtime or whatever time it is. If you're in a different time zone, thank you for spending your time with us this afternoon to talk about this very important issue. Some people ask, well, you're a church group. Why are you getting involved in issues like living wage? Well, our understanding in the UCC is that justice is an important issue for all Christians. In fact, I went on the UCC website earlier today, and the first thing that popped up as I was looking was a picture of a button that says, "So all God's people may thrive. Every worker deserves a living wage." So that's what we're going to talk about today. And we believe that the concept of the church's involvement in justice is really basic to our faith. I want to acknowledge Christy McPherson, who is the co-host today. So this webinar is being brought to you by two groups. One is the Justice and Witness Missional Team of the United Church of Christ in Hawaii, and the other is Raise Up Hawaii. And Christy works with Appleseed Center for Law and Economic Justice, and she's their lead community developer and is the person who is supporting the Raise Up Hawaii project. The first person I am going to introduce is the Reverend Valerie Ross. Valerie is an associate conference minister with the Hawaii Conference of the United Church of Christ. She is also, I'm happy to say, the conference staff person who supports the Justice and Witness Missional Team. And she's here to talk with us about the biblical basis for what we're doing, as well as what the impact is over time for people who do not have a living wage, which I choose to call a just wage, because it's an injustice if we're giving people a wage that continues to keep them in poverty. Valerie?
Linda, thank you so much for that introduction. Welcome to everyone who's on this call. And I agree, I'm going to start right in where Linda left off with the fact that we as people of faith, whether we're in the church or whether we're in other, what's the word I want to use, other faith-based organizations, this is something for us to be concerned about. And I've gotten that argument as well from several people that this is not an issue that the church should undertake. Shouldn't this best be left to the economists? But I say not. And so the Hawaii conference, and I've just arrived here, I just got here in October, but back on February 6th of 2019, the Hawaii conference under someone that was involved with Justice and Witness, I think he might have been a Justice and Witness chairperson, even prior to Linda, Reverend Brandon Duran, he pushed through a resolution regarding living wage. But I like the term that Linda has adopted, justice wage. I like that much better. And so he pushed through a resolution, and I'm just going to briefly say a little bit about that. And the summary is, this living wage resolution is based on the belief that every person or family should be able to be financially self-sufficient and to modestly participate in the fullness of life that God envisions for all people. And so while that resolution was passed in the Hawaii conference, again, in February of 2019, that is the overall feeling across the United Church of Christ. As Linda said, when she went on the website earlier today, she saw something with regard to that. And so the National is pushing that. There are many biblical scriptures that were held up, and I won't read them all into your hearing, but there are at least two from the Old Testament, one from Deuteronomy, one from Jeremiah, and two from the New Testament, both in the Acts of the Apostles, that talk about living wage. And so as Christian brothers and sisters, we're called to have a different relationship with money than our capitalist society dictates. God's command of Sabbath ensured a balance in life and equality in society. And so that's really what this living wage issue is all about for me. Before I arrived in Hawaii back in 2015, I worked on living wage in New York City with a group of clergy called the Micah Institute. And all around that scripture in Micah that tells us how we should conduct ourselves. And so I'm very committed to this work. And I was so pleased when I began working with Linda and the Justice and Witness Missional team. And then I met Christy and Cassie and so many other people that are concerned about this work. Chris Molina, I was out on Friday sign waving with Chris Molina and his group here on Kauai around this very issue. And so I would say that while those of us gathered here have expressed our commitment to the effort of justice wage, again, I like the way Linda has termed it, because we see this as a justice issue. And those of us who are in this fight, whether intimately or marginally, we understand that as a faith community, we have a responsibility to raise our voice morally for what we believe is just. For we believe that although we celebrate $18 an hour, that's a good start. In reality, $18 an hour is not enough. And so when you do the numbers and you look at rents here in Hawaii, you see that $18 an hour doesn't is not enough, because rent is going to take more than 40% of people's income. And so what does that leave them to live on and meet the rest of the obligations that they have? So for instance, if the median rent is $2,486, then a person would need $35.80 per hour. That's reality. If the median rent somewhere else on Hawaii is $2,025, then a person would need $29.21 per hour, and on and on. If the rent somewhere is $1,700 a month, then a person's going to need at a minimum $21.26 an hour just to meet the obligation of rent. That has nothing to do with food. That has nothing to do with clothing and all of the other things that we know that we need. So $18 an hour is, while it's a good start, actually we need to be higher than that and sooner than that. So what's interesting about what we see happening is, as it relates to the shaming of the houseless, that's a term I've learned in Hawaii. In New York, we call it homeless, same thing. No one is talking about the drivers of homelessness, and wage increase is one of or the lack of wage increase, I should say, is one of the drivers of homelessness. That there are persons who are homeless that are working 60 and 70 hours a week, but they can't afford a place to stay. And so this is why this is an issue that the church and other religious groups must undertake, because it's a justice thing. It's just that simple. The only other thing that I would add, I feel very strongly that this is the time to bring racial awareness to the faith community. One, to the crisis, and two, to our call to be people of justice. That's the bottom line, our call to be people of justice. Oftentimes we are so consumed, in the church at least, with our houses of worship and with people that we serve with and committees and infighting and this, that, and the other. But doing that, being involved in that, pulls us away from the justice issues that I feel God has called us to address. And justice wage is one of those issues. And so I wonder what would be our answer if God called us personally, each one of us, and collectively, but personally, and asked us to remember our call to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with God. That's what we're called to do, whether we are physically a member of a church or not. As people of faith, those are the things that we're called to do. And so this whole justice wage issue really is about doing justice and loving mercy and walking humbly with God. And for me, walking humbly with God takes me to something that I've always embraced from Rabbi Abraham Heschel, when he wrote the book, God in Search of Man. And he talks about our partnership with God, that God works with us. God uses human agents. We are here to, as most of us pray on Sunday morning when we pray that prayer that Jesus taught his disciples to pray, when he taught them by saying, we go through that whole litany. And in the middle of that, it says something about God's kingdom on earth being as it is in heaven. And so that's what this is all about for us, doing God's work, partnering with God, allowing our hands and our feet and our mouths to be God's instruments to accomplish God's kingdom here on earth. And that's all that I have to say. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for that opening, Valerie. That was very, very, very powerful. Thank you. I would like to introduce at this time Nate Hicks. Nate is someone I've known for about maybe 4 or 5 years now. And I first met him when I was at Faith Action. But he is a mortgage broker and he's also the director of Living Wage Hawaii. And Nate has been involved in this fight for a very long time, way longer than I have been. And his dedication and motivation to helping people and to fighting for a living wage is very admirable. And he's also very well versed in the data. And I'm excited to have him share. So Nate, take it away.
Thank you very much, Christy. Appreciate all the help you've been giving over the last several years as well. And thanks everybody else for being here and being interested. Okay, raising the minimum wage. One adult needs $18.35, a family of 4. It needs $20.77 an hour just to put food on their table, roof over their head. The percent of families or percent of individuals that have income below the self-sufficiency level, 43% of single adults make less than necessary to just survive. A little over a third, 34% of families of 4 don't make enough. And so the result is, yes, we have people on the street. That is one result. We have people needing to live in crowded situations with other family members. They need to get help from others, maybe their parents are helping with their bills or a cousin or something like that. But this is incredibly too high. This number should be 0%. In a world of abundance, in a state that has one of the biggest tourist draws in the world, it is more than unacceptable, incredibly unacceptable, that we have so many people unable to literally just have their basic needs met. Let's get to the reality. Hawaii's minimum wage is $10.10 an hour. This is the lowest law amongst all blue states in the nation. You can look around. I think the closest is the closest is Nevada at 11. I think they have intentions to raise it. New Mexico, 12. Illinois, 15. These are places with much lower costs of living than Hawaii. Hawaii's is the highest in the nation. And so it is just mind-boggling to think we are so far behind this very important and well-supported issue. And we can take a look at the minimum wage for Hawaii. It was at $7.25 for a very long time. And then in 15, 16, 17, and 18, it raised up to $10.10 where it stands today. That is kind of the history here. We've had 4 raises, I think since 2007, right? 15 years of a raise of only $3, right? And we've been stagnant now for over 4 years. And we can take a look and see, what's being proposed this year. We have 2 competing bills. We have the Senate bill. I'll start with that. That would bring us up to $18 an hour by 2026 with increments of 12, 15, and then to 18. And you can see over here, we have the House bill, which would raise the minimum wage by $1 a year up until $18 by 2030. And, we're very happy that, finally this issue is getting traction. It seems as if something will pass this year, but 2030 is a bit too far away to get to what is needed today. And so we're hoping and asking legislators to support the Senate bill. We need 18 as soon as we can, and waiting till 2030 is not going to work. And this is just to give you some insight into what the national Democrats are doing. They have the Raise the Wage Act, which would push the national minimum wage up to $15 an hour, and it would do it over a 5-year span, right? A $2 increase, $1.50, $1.50, $1.50, and a $1 increase after that. So the pace of the national Democratic bill is much faster than the House bill. And so I think this is a good guideline for what at least should be kind of the minimum approach here in Hawaii. You know, roughly an $8 raise over 5 years is very doable. And this is the annual income difference. So currently a full-time worker making minimum wage is at $21,000. And then by the time they get to $18 an hour, they would be making $37,000, which is a significant change, right? I mean, this is a $16,000 raise. I think any of us working would be more than happy to receive a $16,000 raise. Again, it's not everything we need, it's not everything we want, but it is a very, very significant help for all these people working. And then again, just to compare the Senate bill, in 2026, a worker would be making $8,000 more per year under the Senate version. And that's a lot of money. I mean, $8,000 for anybody is a significant sum. And so, you know, again, we're trying to push for the Senate version. Hopefully that can be the version that becomes law. And here's a little chart for you to see the differences. The Senate bill here is in blue. The House bill here is in red. And the green line, again, is that national Democrats bill, the one supported by Biden and national senators and US representatives. And so again, you can see this green bill moves at a much swifter pace than the House. So I think there's a lot of room for improvement from the House. And here's kind of the timeline of what things would look like. This is every 2 years. So going back to 2018, workers were $7.37 short of what a livable wage was. By 2026, even if when we get a $4 minimum wage increase, workers are still going to be roughly the same amount short of a livable wage, assuming costs rise at about 2% a year. A livable wage by 2026 will be around $21. And by the time 2030 gets here, the livable wage will be higher. And then we'll finally start to make some ground up, right? Workers are still going to be short. Again, it's not a perfect bill by any means. We still have tons of work to do. But clearly today, workers are today $9.62 short. So we're terribly far behind and have tons of work to do. And so again, this is the House bill. Compare this to the Senate bill. Oops. Compare this to the Senate bill, and these are every year. By 2026, workers would only be $3.35 short. So cutting into that gap much faster. Again, that bill also isn't perfect, and we would definitely need increases after 2026 to close that gap, but puts us on a better trajectory. And so oftentimes when people discuss these issues, people always ask, all right, what's going to happen? What really is going to happen when we raise the minimum wage? And I'm just going to give you some historical charts here so we can see what has happened here in Hawaii when the minimum wage rose from $7.25 to $10.10. And we can take a look here. Here are different different groups of employees: food prep, janitor, personal care, cashiers, retail salespeople. And you can see this going all the way back to 1999. And this dark blue line at the bottom is the minimum wage. And you can see when the minimum wage goes up, their wages go up pretty much directly in concert with that. These people were making $8 an hour in 2014. And now in 2018, they went up and were making $10.10, right? Without that minimum wage increase, you can see that these people were going to be stuck at $8. So that's pretty clear. Workers at the bottom are definitely going to receive raises. What happens with economic output? Does the economy crash? Does everything, does the sky fall and the economy stops working? You can see this red dotted line is the trend line from 2010 to 2014. The economy was growing, growing, growing. Then the minimum wage increases and the economic output actually outpaces the trend line, right? Hawaii's economy is actually doing better than it was in the previous 4 years. And so from our standpoint, our own reality here in Hawaii, the minimum wage has corresponded with a increase in our economic output, okay? What happens with unemployment? You know, we always hear people saying unemployment is, you know, people are going to be laid off. Nobody's going to have jobs. And you can see again, 2010, we were coming out of the Great Recession and unemployment was dropping. And you can see again here on this red trend line what occurred. And unemployment again declined faster, right? The number of jobs, we hit record lows with in 2018 with a 10-10 minimum wage. Unemployment was at record lows. And so, you know, it's not based in reality when people talk about, oh, if you raise the minimum wage, you're going to see massive layoffs and nobody's going to have a job. What happens with prices? Okay. You can again see this red trend line showing the increase in the cost of goods. And actually, the increase in the price of goods did not go up as fast as the trend line would have estimated it to. And so although prices do increase, and I will say this is kind of an anomaly, we would have expected to rise up just a little bit faster. However, it is not some sort of dramatic, oh, the minimum wage is going to go from $10.10 an hour to 18. So now my $10 plate lunch is going to cost $18. That's just not the reality, right? And so here is based on more robust studies, what would happen? So you can look at a Musa B, $1.79 with a 10-10 wage. It's going to maybe bump it up to $1.90 with an $18 raise, right? A cheeseburger goes from $4.49 to $4.76, poke bowl $6.99 to $7.41, plate lunch $12.15 to $12.88. From my perspective, and when you ask people, this is a very reasonable increase in prices to make sure that people are closer to making a livable wage, right? I would be more than happy to pay an extra 70 cents for a plate lunch, right? And a 6% increase in cost. So workers are making nearly 80% more. This is probably one of the largest issues that people like to bring up. And so just to, you know, have some sort of weapons in your toolkit, you can, you know, either remember these or we can send them out to say, you know, the reality is price increases are not as significant or overblown as people like to say they are. What happens to businesses? Oh, our business is going to close. Again, the trend line here was, again, I will say the Great Recession is a bit of an outlier, right? We did have businesses sort of on the uptick, but you can see businesses even rose faster than that too. The number of businesses in Hawaii rose significantly while the minimum wage was increasing. This did not lead to closures. Again, it did not lead to unemployment. But what about the small businesses? These are the ones that people really care about, not the big ones. Again, bit of an outlier with the Great Recession, but here the number of small businesses was pretty flat for a while, and you can see their numbers are increasing, right? Again, raising the minimum wage did not spell doom for our Hawaii small businesses. We saw an increase in the number of small business establishments, okay? And then there's also argument about the tip credit and, well, servers make more, so what's going to happen to them? Same path. The number of servers increased dramatically, actually, over a 20% increase in the number of wait staff during that time. So it's very reasonable for us to raise the minimum wage and not see some doom and gloom reality. We've done it. States have done it across the nation. It's very reasonable for us to follow their lead. And again, the Democratic Party of Hawaii platform, we believe that the current minimum wage is a starvation wage and must be increased to a living wage, right? This is the Democratic Party platform. This is what Democrats say they stand for and absolutely what needs to happen. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, when members of Congress fight to set the minimum wage below a living wage, they are playing a role in creating and preserving poverty in the United States. Seems pretty clear cut to me, and always stoked to see her wearing that living wage Hawaii shirt. So what can you do? What can I do? Call, email your legislator, specifically your representative. That's going to be the person with the most sway at this point, because again, we're trying to get to that Senate bill. Ask them, what will you do to get to $18 per hour sooner than 2030? 2030 is too long. And will you support the Senate version? Will you support SB 2018? That is the preferred way to get to $18. Okay, I think that's it. I don't know if questions are now or later, but I appreciate you guys listening, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Nate. Boy, if those statistics don't say a lot, I mean, that is very helpful, and very nicely laid out. Thank you so much. I want to call on Jhoe Rosales. He is someone I met in this past year, and I think his story, I'm so glad he's here to share his story. And I think you will find it very helpful in framing why we're here. This is exactly why we're here. So anyway, Jhoe, please go ahead and share with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Christy. My name is Jhoe Rosales. I am pleased to meet every one of you. You would like to share my story. Increasing the minimum wage may not only save my family from their troubles, but also myself as a student who attends college at UH Manoa. I believe that increasing minimum wage supports people from different parts of the financial and social mobility spectrum in Hawaii. Many workers rely on food stamps and other necessities. Because Hawaii has the highest cost of all the states, it is impossible to afford and live sustainably, causing families to move to the mainland or outside of the US. For instance, I work 3 jobs: Pan Express, Abilities Unlimited, and Center of the Disability Studies. The reason I'm working 3 jobs is because I need to support my parents who are having difficulties making their ends meet. So we are 2 generations of low-wage workers. My dad works 2 jobs plus the Uber, paying for the rent, food, and other bills. My mom works 1 job, and she relies on my dad due to an inability to read and write. My father is a hardworking and honest man, is someone I look up to, being strong, resilient, and courageous. He also definitely knows suffering and hardship. Seeing how much effort he put into work made me realize I had to assist him because it was difficult to do on his own, which is why I gave him $200 to $300 a month to help with bills. The result to my working 3 jobs caused disruptions in my studies and creates stress and burnout from day to day. As I mentioned, I attend UH Manoa. I find it impossible to be a full-time student, and it's taking me longer to graduate on time. In addition, it caused me to almost want to give up on school. However, I have to persevere to the darkest time in my life. I'm pleading with our lawmakers. If you're willing to increase the minimum wage to $18 by 2026, I wouldn't need to apply to extra job. It would help my family so that they don't feel the need to work extra hard to sustain themselves living in Hawaii. I understand the fear that businesses are feeling, but what about the workers? We need to be treated fairly. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Jhoe. Thank you for sharing your story, and thank you to our other presenters. You know, before we get into the questions and answers, I want to read you one of the scripture passages that Valerie mentioned to us, because it's actually the one that's on the Living Wage website of the United Church of Christ. This is Deuteronomy 24, verse 14. You shall not withhold the wages of the poor and needy workers, whether other Israelites or aliens who reside in your land in one of your towns. And I think we all know the Micah passage that she quoted, at least at Church of the Crossroads. I know it's one of our cornerstone scriptures that we try to live by. The UCC page also says, God's concern for the poor at heart is at the heart of the Christian ethic of economic justice. Our biblical heritage teaches us that caring for the poor, the least among us, the stranger, and the ones on the margins is central to our understanding of God's mercy and our willingness to love our neighbor. So one of the questions that has come in is, what do you say to those people who are concerned about teens who are just starting to work and making such a high wage? Who would like to address that?
Yeah, I can take that.
Thanks, Nate.
Yeah, sure. So again, based on the data we've seen, unemployment does not increase when we raise the minimum wage. It has not had a negative impact. And so the same teens that were looking for work and were getting it before the minimum wage is raised are still able to get jobs when the minimum wage has been raised. So fortunately, we don't have any evidence or data pointing to teens not able to find work. So that's just a scare tactic to try to push people off the path, but it hasn't come out to be true in the reality.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And I think one of the issues that comes up is people saying, well, why should those teenagers get that much money? That's also one of the issues that comes up. And to me, it comes down to just a really basic matter of fairness. If you do the work, you get the pay. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of people, for whatever reason, have this like superiority complex that they deserve to make a lot more than another person, which I find to be a bit displeasing in the first place. But there are plenty of, because unemployment doesn't rise, whether the teenager and doesn't need to support their family doesn't mean that they don't deserve to make that much money, right? They help them save for college. Just because their immediate costs might not be that low in the moment, there's no reason for them to be able to be exploited at that point.
Yeah. Well, I think the pandemic has taught us a couple of things. We got to see who the essential workers actually are. Yeah. And many of them are low wage earners. And yet we defined the work that they were doing as essential for our economy to continue to operate. The other
Linda,
thing that
after you.
Yeah. The other thing we've seen is that there are workers now who are saying, yes, we are essential, and are beginning to demand a fair or just wage for the work that they're doing. So I think that there are big lessons from the pandemic. And I also know that there are many employers now who are finding themselves forced to raise what they pay because workers, especially those who were told they were essential, are now saying, I deserve to be paid a fair wage for what I'm doing.
Linda?
Yes.
May I say something?
You may.
I would like to lift up Jhoe Rosales' presentation. This is the first time I have been moved in a long while. Very powerful, to the point, and he cut the issue. It's no longer a problem, it's an issue. Either you're for it or against it. And I am for increasing minimum wage, thanks to Jhoe Rosales. And we need to hear more from people like him, living ordinary lives in such extraordinary ways. Thank you, Jhoe. Thank you. Mahalo.
Yes, thank you for that,
Well.
Jessica. And when you hear a story like the story of yours, Jhoe, and your families, then from my perspective, as people who call ourselves Christian, we really have to say, are we willing? You know, are we willing to allow people to have to work 3 jobs, 2 jobs, just to barely make things, just to barely meet their expenses? Is that loving our neighbor? Yeah. So thank you again, Jhoe. Yes, Flora.
Hi, I'm Flora. You know, I had a comment when I register. I want to say that we ask people like elderly who work, they don't have enough money for their needs and their salary because they they're too old to get another job, but they make less. But now I work temporary because of a pandemic, and my job is on hold, but it's 10/10. But if I get another job, I want to get I want to look for $18, but it's hard. But I like Joe's presentation, but because he's good and I'm agree with him, and I still looking for job because it's hard, and then people cannot afford that their mortgage and everything, and soon everything will be high. That's why, and the price everything will be high. The food, mortgage, um, shopping mall, like even school kids like my son go to school, have to pay his lunch. It costs like $2 or $3 something, and then he's needed too for school supplies. So I can afford.
Yeah, and so it would make a big difference to you to have a just living wage.
Yes.
Yeah.
Then it's good for hopefully soon it's gonna be like $18. It's good is just $18 an hour right now. You know,
Yeah.
so people
Yeah, that
can
would be good.
happy. Yeah, make people happy.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
Flora, for your question and for sharing. You know,
Thank you.
I think what we're really hearing, Jhoe, is that you've made this real for people. You know, it's important to know the data and to know the statistics, but when we hear the real story, that's what's touching us in our hearts and our consciences, perhaps. Yeah. So thank you again so much.
You're
You know, we
welcome.
had another question about what do you say to small business owners who say that this is going to be difficult for them?
Yeah, again, fortunately, the data shows that small businesses can thrive as a result, especially the ones that focus here on the local workers, right? If you're a restaurant in Waipahu or on Wailai or some of these non-tourist hubs where the local workers, the local people are shopping there, if they have more money, they can spend it at a local stop, right? They aren't going to be forced to shop at the low-cost Walmart, right? You put more money in their hands, they can shop at a place that they would like to support rather than just having to struggle to survive. So, and we've seen that, right? The economy grows faster when the minimum wage is increased. It helps by a lot. And something that can be scary is the small business owners who are paying their workers $10.10 an hour or $11 or 12 hours today could look at their books and they could definitely say, it is not financially feasible for me to pay somebody $18 an hour tomorrow. But that's the nice thing. We're not asking them to do that. We're gradually rolling it out and the economy can evolve and grow as in tandem. And so the economy that they are existing in today will not be the same economy when they have an $18 minimum wage. And so I know that high number for them is like, whoa, that's an impossibility. But especially when everybody's doing it together, their competition is also raising their wages so they can, pass that small increase in price to the customers and not be fearful that they're going to lose out on customers because they're the only ones raising prices. And so that's why small businesses, I'm assuming every single one of them would love the reality to be able to pay their workers a livable wage. I don't think anybody goes into business thinking, I want all my staff to be struggling to survive. The unfortunate reality is with such a low minimum wage, that is the financial reality for so many of them. And so this can help not only boost their business, boost the sales, but also they're going to have employees who are going to be better workers. Jhoe, for example, might be able to work one job and get more sleep and be a happier person and can show up to work doing a much better job. Not saying he probably is doing a great job already, but I know when I'm sleep deprived or stressed out about trying to make ends meet, I can't focus and be a great worker. So those are all the massive benefits that can help local small businesses.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, and there is plenty of evidence that from businesses that have raised their wages, that workers who feel appreciated and are not stressed out from day to day, or not stressed out about finances and not exhausted from having to work too many jobs, are more productive workers. It's good for the business, actually. That's been proven in many places. I want to go back to Christy now, because we don't want to leave this without giving you actions to take.
I think we have a hand up from Lee. I do apologize.
Oh, I'm sorry. My screen is not showing everybody at once. Thanks, Lee. Go ahead.
Thank you, Nate. Actually, my question earlier was to Nate, if the senators' representatives have had your presentation, the graphics. Have they had your presentation?
Yeah, so they've been sent graphics around this. They haven't gotten the full Nate Hicks experience, but they do get the information out there.
That's good. I taught at Central Middle School for 20 years, and I just wanted to say that the story is much more troublesome than just getting the minimum wage, because a lot of my women, a lot of mothers worked at McDonald's, but they send them home. They work for a few hours at lunch, they're sent home, then they work for a few hours in the evening. So they're not working a 40-hour week. It's really, really difficult. And also when the economy goes south and less people are coming to Hawaii, and the people of the parents of the kids I taught, they are the ones that are let off first. They're the ones cleaning the rooms in the hotels, making the beds. And they're completely out of work. So it's a much more fragile life they have. I had many families who were living 12 to 14 people in a 2-bedroom place and barely hanging on.
Yeah. So. Thank you, Lee.
Oh, hi, Jhoe. My name is Kelly Coco, and I just have a question. You see, my in-laws are from the Philippines, but they moved to California in the 70s, and they raised 4 wonderful sons. I was just wondering, is there more difficulties? I can imagine more difficulties, people coming from another country, because they're from the Philippines. They worked, like the hotels, very hardworking family. I was just wondering if, what's your experience? Where are you from, or your parents? I'm sorry,
Well, my parents are from the Philippines. My dad is from Cagayan, Sanchez Mira, and my mom is from Paniki, Tarlac. And my mom and dad came to America around 1995, and they became the U.S. citizen within 4 years past. So I remember my dad had to work 2-3 jobs, and he was very stressed out to the point where he had to make his ends meet, and my mom had to work for 1 job. And I remember I never really understood why my parents had to work a lot, because I barely see them at home. And most of the time I had to babysit. Most of the time my family members had to babysit with me and my sister. So often that it gets harder to get the connection with my parents. But sometimes I have to understand why they did it. And I remember my father would share with me the struggles that's happening in the Philippines, especially for young kids who had to not able to go to bus, had to walk all the way to school, and they had to work extra hard to, to succeed in school. And it made me thinking, but then I never even think about it quite often. But now this time I feel like I really need to have that wake up call. And of course it's difficult just because, again, like I'm just so used to depending on my parents so much that I never developed the independent skill. And I just kind of wish I should have listened to my parents earlier, and I wouldn't make this mistake as I ever did than I was before. So that's why I respect my parents who had to work really hard to come to America just for a better education for me and my sister.
Thank you, Jhoe. Thank you for answering that question. So I want to be sure that we do get back to Christy so that she can give us the actions that we can be taking. That passage from Micah doesn't say think about justice or learn about justice. It says do justice or act with justice. And so we want to be sure that we give you the information about how you can do that. So Christy, can you help us?
Thank you, Linda. Yes, this is a very unique year for this issue, for this living, raising the minimum wage. And the reason is it is an election year. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of dynamics. But one thing that you can do to help speed up our goal of changing, of having the House amend their bill to 2026 rather than 2030 is to show up for our living wage rally that we're having on Tuesday, March 8th, which is a week from this coming Tuesday. Granted, we wish we had more time to plan this. However, we are going to go forward and have a rally. We're trying to engage unions, workers, organizations, advocates, and everyone else that is very concerned about this issue. And what we are going to do is have some speeches from legislators who have been very supportive of this issue. We want to also have workers. Obviously, they are the core of our the heart of what we're trying to do. We're also going to have hopefully some union leaders who can speak. And then after that, we're going to surround the rotunda. In the rotunda, we're going to surround the hearing. They're going to have a final floor vote on House Bill 2510 at the same time as our rally, right before it crosses over to the other chamber. So for the House to go to the Senate and the Senate bills to cross over to the House. So this is a critical time, and we're going to actually be chanting during this time to remind our lawmakers that they need to speed up this process. They need to speed up the timeline. It's ridiculous to do a 2030 timeline at this point. And so we need to let them know that we are listening and we are watching them right as they're voting on this. So please show up if you're able to. Please spread the word. We want to have as many people, as many warm bodies there as we can. And that's one way you can get involved. Another way would be to provide testimony. So if you go on the capital.hawaii.gov website, you can submit testimony for Senate. You can type in for hearing notices for Senate Bill 2018 and also House Bill 2510. And that way you can be informed. Many of you who've submitted testimony, you know how to do this, but you can be informed of when a hearing is coming up, and you can support Senate Bill 2018, and you can also oppose House Bill 2510 until they amend it to 2026. So That's what we're doing. And that's one other way you can get involved. A third way is you can come out and do some sign waving with us. So we sign wave every Wednesday from 4 to 5:30 down in by the Ward area, Ward and Kapiolani. And then we also sign wave on Thursdays across the island at different locations. So if you register for our Raise Up Hawaii website action alerts, you will find out about where we're going to be at any given time for sign waving. But we could use you if you're interested in that and are able to help us. So thank you so much.
Well, again, thank you for being with us today. I hope that this presentation has inspired you to get involved and to actively work to make this change with the living wage, to have a just wage for the people in our community. You know, one of the things about Hawaii is we have a very large immigrant population, and many families are experiencing the same thing that we were hearing in Jhoe's story. We have a lot of people who actually are professional people, and they come here and they haven't been able to get licensed to practice their professions, and they end up working in really low wage jobs. And we have immigrants who come here who are here trying to make a better life for their families, and they are still learning the language proficiency. They're still figuring out how to get into the job market. And when they get in, it's very often in very low wage positions. So there's a huge portion of our population here in Hawaii who are affected by the low wages. So our goal is exactly what the UCC says to us: to be united in God's love, seeking justice for all. And the particular justice we're working for right now is for a just living wage for the people of Hawaii. Thank you again to all of you who have been with us. Thank you to Christy. Thank you to Jhoe. Thank you to Nate. Thank you to Valerie. Thank you for being with us, and aloha.